Thank you so very much. It is a great pleasure and honor to be addressing this big audience. And I've been following, of course, the activities of Eurasia for a long time. And indeed, it has been a kind of celebration for Finnish polytechnics, as they were called, and now universities of applied sciences, because they are now, the system is 25 years old. And of course, there have been all kinds of discussions how to diversify the tertiary education, the higher education system for the benefit of our young people, but also for the benefit of the Finnish society at large and the labour market. And we are very happy with the development of the University of Applied system in Finland. And of course, during these very strange times we are now living, it has been very, very self-evident for everybody now that we absolutely need higher education. We need research, development and innovation work in very many forms so that we can serve societies. And we can see that now everybody can see that anything can happen. So black swans are there and they will be there forever. They might change in form, but things happen, and the better educated people we have, the more we can invest in higher education, in R&D and I, and the better impact we can have from the system helps us through all kinds of difficult times. So I'm very happy to be here, and of course the whole title, Sustainable Development, is very important, and I'm very happy to say that it is actually the kind of framework for the present Finnish coalition government. So we have very many themes coming directly from the coalition program that we are now implementing within higher education R&DI system. And if I can have the first slide, please. And while we wait for the slide of the how we describe and understand the megatrends and significant processes which affect education, science, technology and innovation all over the world, we can better discuss what is happening and how we think that we actually now need education and research in order to survive on the planet. So is the slide system working? Can we see the slides?
The slide system is working. You need to select in audience view to see what the next slide is.
Audience view right there. Sorry about that. Yes. So the megatrends and significant processes. And of course the demographic change which is going at the global level, which will change, as we have already witnessed, the kind of growth, how it is developing in different parts of the world, and also where the change or in the demographic situation will be the largest. And then we have these kinds of problems, as we see in many European countries, that we are aging nations. And this is especially true in Finland. Finland is one of the most rapidly aging nation, and it entails that we have fewer new babies born every year. There has been a very significant drop in birth rate in Finland. And then there are very big regional differences. And this is, of course, very relevant to our higher education system, to the system of universities of applied sciences. And it is a kind of dual challenge, I would say. How do we get enough students to all the institutions? And how can we make sure that we have this kind of a regionally responsive network of higher education institutions? And the regional responsiveness was one of the reasons why we established this University of Applied Sciences network, to be parallel but different to the university network. And of course then globalization. Many people think that there will be a kind of different solutions now, partly because of the pandemic to globalization. There are voices who say that perhaps we now have to rethink that has it been a good idea that we have so much centralized the production of protective care, uh, uh, clothes and the all kinds of equipment for the health and care personnel. They are everything basically is manufactured in China. And also then medications, vaccinations. We have a big discussion here in Finland whether we should take a new look at these issues also. And whether this globalization trend is still going on, whether it will be stronger. And I would say that a very interesting new kind of feature in the globalization discussion is that we have a kind of power struggle in the development of science and technology now. And we can see that it is a very strong feature in the debate or discussion between China and the US and Europe. I think we have to position ourselves also in that discussion. And I'm sure that we all want to have more international collaboration because we think that international collaboration is in contributing to the questions of quality and also impact of our higher education and research and development and innovation. And of course, as all the big problems and challenges of the planet are global, they are universal, we have to be able to solve them together. That's the only solution. But whether this is possible or not, then we will perhaps have to discuss this also from this viewpoint. And of course, the differences in the European setting also, that we see big differences in the development of Europe and even European Union member states. Well, then the differences or the big changes happening thanks to science and technological development are huge. And we've now seen the impact and effect digital technologies have in all walks of life. There has been the big leap taken to digital education. And of course, it was a forced leap done overnight in all over the world, in European countries and in many parts of the other countries also. And as we can see that it works, we can work wonders with digital education, higher education, and it will probably change how we think higher education, the delivery of education. But then we can, I'm sure, all agree that it doesn't solve all the problems when we think about higher education. It increases accessibility to some extent, but then are there new audiences that are left behind? And of course, then the quality of actual learning. Is it better, or do we have to still pay attention to pedagogical development of our teachers, teaching staff, and also students, how to make the best of digitalization and online education? And of course, then we can see this digital transfer going on in our economic structures. And this is a challenge to higher education, to R&D and I. Whether we can serve this transformation from the present to virtual reality in different walks of economic life. This is a huge challenge, and we know that there can't be any major kind of transformation of economic structures and societies if we can't serve this transformation. And this is a big challenge and a huge opportunity for higher education system all over our continent and of course globally. And we see in I would say at global level that there is the problem and challenge of increasing inequality. And this is actually true in Finland also. We used to think that our education system is really a kind of model and example of equity and equality in education. But unfortunately, we can see that there are growing differences that go, or the root causes perhaps the socio-economic situation of families and children and young people. And of course, these gaps now between different groups, they have become very visible in the area of online learning. We need now more support from homes for the young people and children, especially in their educational path, and it is not available for everybody. And even in higher education, we can see that the students are not well. We have very many results, and we follow very closely what is happening in higher education, all our institutions, and we have very concerning reports how students feel that they are not getting everything out of their studies, and they feel lonely, and there's kind of anxiety growing in the student body. And also, again, that there are growing differences or visible differences between the skills of our teaching staff, how they can make use of online learning. So the differences were there, and they are now even more visible. And also, I think that we can see this at the global level. Well, technological development, definitely. I refer to it because it is changing our economic structures, it is changing our societies at large, so we have to respond to it. And when I say respond, I actually mean that we are not only following the education system, cannot just react to what is happening in the world, in societies, in economic life, business and industry. We should be much stronger in molding the future. And this, I think, is a big discussion matter. We should discuss more. How can we be more proactive in promoting change, which is inevitable, so that we wouldn't have to just react to changes? And work and business transformation, that was the whole point. And of course, the kind of planetary existential question for us all is how do we deal with the environment and climate change? These are the big megatrends that are there for all the countries and for, I would say, for all the institutions of higher education. We have to be able to change this to lead the way to better future for everybody. And the next slide, please. And as I said, we have the, again, I hope, yes, it's there. Yeah. As I said, we have a very good government program to, so that the starting point is really the Sustainable Development Goals, the Agenda 2030. And there are very good kind of policy guidelines from those. And our universities of applied sciences and also universities, they have been very active to create their own kind of frameworks, how they would like to take aboard this challenge to create more sustainable, responsible and carbon neutral universities and universities of applied sciences. And this is really the work of the sectors themselves. Both universities did the same kind of thinking amongst themselves, and then universities of applied sciences also amongst the whole network. And I think this is a very good approach, because they set the goals and also that they show the understanding that they have to be the essential solution. So this is not that we can that they are saying that there are huge challenges and we don't have enough money. But the whole kind of thinking behind the strategies of our higher education institutions is changing, and these are the topics. So the education side, which is obviously a very strong point, that's the main task of universities of applied sciences, at least in Finland. And then the change in societies is done through these experts, through the educated, well-educated, better educated population. They can do the transformation. So that is the promise that our system gives to future students and also those who are now in working life. And I will come back to the idea of lifelong learning or continuous learning. So the education side will be changed. Of course, the contents of teaching and learning and of the programs, but also the method how they deliver education to make it more accessible, and also that the contents then serve the big changes and needs. And management and personnel skills in the system. So the promise is that they will act as economically, ecologically, and culturally and socially responsible employers. And this is something that we have actually from the government side expected that our university system, higher education system does. They have to be attractive employers, and as we can see, there's a big change in the attitudes of our younger people. They want to put very much stress and value on this sustainable development, and they expect different kinds of attitudes and also how the whole system works, how the institutions are led and managed. And then naturally R&D and I. And this is a big thing because we need solutions. We need solutions. I think everybody is now more or less aware of the challenges, and now it's time to produce the solutions. And we expect a lot from the institutions, and we are very happy that the institutions have taken the challenge and have given the promise to all of us, and also obviously to teachers and students, that this is what will be done, researchers, and this will obviously entail very close collaboration between different sectors of society and different players. And the next one, please. And then if we see the numbers in the Finnish system, and this I use now the case Finland as an example. The age cohort of Finland is now less than 60,000 per year. So you can put then into context that the annual contribution of universities of applied sciences is about 30,000 new graduates per year. And these are people who enter the labor market in a very different situation than the earlier generations. And the share and the output and volume of research and development and innovation work has grown very rapidly in Finland. We put this as a duty to our universities of applied sciences later. It was not there at the first when we created the system, but it has been there, the R&D and I, as a duty they have to have, everybody that has been there for about 10 years. So there has been a very, I would say, remarkable growth in the volume, but still we see that there would be so much more our universities of applied sciences could do. And this is the kind of setting where they are working. And the sustainable development skills for everybody, this is the goal. And then the sustainability in R&D, and I think we talked about this already. The challenge in UAS sector has been that there's a lack of basing or core funding for them in this. So they are very much dependent on the funding from other parties. They have used very much social funds from the European Union and also regional funding, but the kind of long-term funding is still something that we have to work together with the institutions themselves. But still, as I said, very much and very positive development in this. And the next slide you can see, and this is something that we very much now stress, and our government puts very much value on this, that we create inclusive and competent Finland. And this means that we have to have diversity, more diversity in our nature, and I would say in our industry. And obviously, as you probably know, that we are paper and pulp country, and forestry is very important for us, and I'm sure you can understand that it is not always very easy to reconcile the needs for this carbon neutrality and the strongholds of our traditional industry. And obviously also the education and research and development innovation system, they have a lot to work in this. But the goal is very ambitious. By 2035, we should be carbon neutral. And as you can see, this kind of goal, it needs a whole new thinking, how we educate our people, because the people can make the change. This has been our very strong message, and that's why I keep coming to the same conclusion and keep repeating this same idea. And also the kind of global aspect of higher education, research and innovation, which I already referred to. And this is a challenge for many institutions, because obviously you have to be very competent in your own activities, and you have to have this kind of knowledge and expertise base, that you actually have something to offer to other parties in the world, so that we could have more students to Finland and more teaching staff and other faculty to Finland, so that we can build new kinds of global alliances. And we have actually put some extra funding to this kind of approach in the whole higher education system. And then in the times when you have this kind of demographic situation as we have in Finland, then it is very high on the agenda that we have a dynamic and thriving Finland. So we absolutely need to have more students, more also foreign labor force in Finland in the coming years. This has been I would say, not an easy theme in Finnish policies so far, but now there is the goal set to the higher education system that we should have 3 times more international students taking their degrees in Finland in the coming years. And we also try to have 75% employment rate for those international students who complete their higher education degree in Finland. And this means a lot to the whole system in the coming years. How this is possible, it is increasing the quality and obviously have this kind of programs that are interesting to international audience. And then if we go to the next slide, and this is now about the Sustainable Growth Programme. And we use this EU tool as an instrument to modernize our economy, but also we use it as a kind of I would say, overall answer to many of the problems or challenges I just mentioned. And obviously, when we have the coalition program, which is about very ambitious climate policies, very ambitious internationalization policy now to higher education and research system especially, and then that we have to increase investment in R&D and I. This is actually a recommendation from the Commission to Finland from many years already, and obviously we will make use of that. And then the employment rate, we will actually need big changes or increase in this, because obviously the whole future of our system depends on this. And we are now, the employment rate, overall employment rate is around 72%. It would have to be at least 75% so that we could keep up the good system and the very generous well-being in the country. And then regional, social and gender equality is also a very high priority in our program. And then perhaps I would stress the next point, which is the continuous learning. And the whole idea is to increase the education and also the knowledge and expertise level of the whole population. We have put the goal to educate at least 50% of young adults to higher education by 2030. But then we have to also take into account that as we have these great big reforms or transformations going on in society and economic life, we have to train and retrain and re-educate our people throughout our lives. And this is the big reform we are now implementing, the continuous learning program. And this means that we could actually offer shorter periods or shorter programs for those people who are working, so that they could have their employability up to the level all the time and would help to make our businesses be competitive throughout their existence. And I can say that it hasn't been very easy to get this idea through, that we have to have this kind of education, continuous learning reform and R&D and I element present in all pillars of our sustainable growth program, because we can't actually make a good success in this transformation if we don't have people who have been equipped with new knowledge and tools to make the change. And this means that there's a kind of paradigm change going on in Finland, how we think about education system. The continuous learning is becoming almost as important as the traditional education system, where the aim is to have the very good initial training. And the next slide tells you about the education policy report, what we have been given now, the government has given to the parliament. And there the idea is that we could have this kind of longer term perspectives and also policy guidelines. How will we develop the whole sector towards 2040s? And why 2040s? Because 2030 is already here practically, and by 2040 we will see the changes, for example, in demographic structures, how they actually what kind of impact they have on a system, and we want the whole parliament to discuss this. There are some very, very difficult solutions they will have to make decisions, And obviously, when we have these big regional differences in the countries and where we have an aging nation almost diminishing in every part of the country, then there's the question, how can we make sure that we have accessible system, that we have the services throughout the country? And then again, we come to the discussion whether digital technologies will help us out. To universities perhaps, and universities of applied sciences, it is a good result, but not probably to the rest of the system. And then if we could go a few slides ahead, the vision for higher education and research, which is the next slide still, you can see it in a nice picture. If you put the next slide, there are 5 pillars that we want our university system, higher education system to work towards. And of course, as you can see, these all entail very close collaboration and international level throughout the sectors in the field. So I'm very much now knowledgeable about the time. And do we have any time for questions? Or
a few minutes, Anita. Well, thank you very much for the overview, and I think there was a number of issues which are really important from perspective of professional higher education and the overall development. There are a few questions. My first starting point would be you amazingly differentiated the role of universities and universities of applied sciences, yet we see that there are sort of mergers of the institutions together, that the borders are sort of blurring. How do you see this future development? Because it seems that the Finnish systems might be moving sort of to more sort of complex system with diversified missions.
Yes, this is a big question. As you know, we still have different acts of legislation, one for universities, one for universities of applied sciences. And this is a kind of very strong political will that we have these two different acts, and we have also funding models that are divergent from each other to some extent, so that they illustrate the different kind of tasks these two sectors have. But then there are very, very strong kind of structural development that has been going on in the system, and there are mergers within the university sector. There have been mergers in the universities of applied sciences, and we have also seen these kind of combinations of these. They are kind of structural structural things that we haven't been able to put really a title, because the legislation entails that even though universities can buy polytechnics, then the polytechnics have to act according to the act on their own, and universities again on their own. And there is, as you well know, there's always this kind of tension between these two, and I would say tension amongst the politicians, how they see these fields. Still, that I think this has been always the issue there and continues to be there.
I will have space for one question which was there, but I would still like to comment, because we are now discussing as well what's the future of universities of applied sciences. And with the new era, we came to the idea that, well, these institutions are quite in a great position, especially in the regions, as you said, to act as the regional hubs, as the connecting hubs. And at the same time, within our discussions, we recognize that there are qualities which the partnership with academic institutions can bring, the qualities which they can sort of benefit from. But probably the role of connecting the different stakeholders and actors on regional level might be something where the strength of the sector may be seen. In line with that, there was a question, and I think that's really challenging. the new concept and all the addressing of sustainability and bringing all missions together, does it mean the new view on quality, on sort of approaching the quality assurance and all the quality arrangements? What is your view?
Well, this is something that I think hasn't been really discussed, because obviously the quality assurance has to do with the fact whether the contents of the degree programs and other educational offering is relevant. Of course, it's part of the quality assurance, so I'm sure it will follow. But I would also try to draw your attention to the fact that, for example, this picture, the 2030 vision for higher education and research. I think it was quite remarkable that this is a joint vision for the both sectors. And obviously, we can think that it is perhaps something that will then, in the coming years, also guide the way to a more coherent policy approaches to it. And when I went through all the big challenges facing the globe and Finland especially, then we need these kinds of answers, similar answers from the both sectors. And still the stress, I would say, very, very big thing emerging now are the regional questions. When we have these big regional issues becoming bigger and bigger, then there are eyes turned onto universities of applied sciences especially.
Well, thank you for that, and it confirms indeed that the regional engagement is becoming one of our priorities as well, because it brings the different missions together. And you also partly answered the question which I would have done. I would have seen, what would you see as the European approach to that and the collaboration? I believe that we will be happily looking at the Finnish development, and it was always inspiring. But all the arrangements should be probably addressed jointly at the European level, because the area is becoming more coherent.
Yes, and I think we are all using, as far as I've seen a few of the RRF programs from different countries, many of them obviously address the same issues. And now I think the big question is that whether we could have some arrangements, programs, collaboration around those themes. It is a bit, well, I was going to say sad, perhaps not sad, but it's not very productive that we all plan them amongst ourselves, because they should be kind of joint responses from higher education towards the development of the European Union. So much is at stake now, and we could have clearly a very European approach to this if we wanted. And then there's a question, if I may say a few words about the continuous learning. There was a question on the chat, and this is a very important thing that we are also planning, and we will use our funding, I hope, from the RRF to make this digital service around continuous learning. And this is also very interesting, because it will entail all the education, starting from upper secondary vocational education, higher education, and of course the kind of adult education we have, especially in the Nordic countries. But this will be a huge system, and we will also have new kind of organization within the National Agency of Education, which will be steered by the two ministries, ourselves, the Ministry of Education and Culture, and the Ministry of Labour and the Environment. And then we will have also social partners in organizing and steering the funding that will be used. I would say that will be exciting.
Well, thank you, and we will be really curious to see how this sort of intergovernmental cooperation will develop. But I think there was a number of inspiring things for all of us, and thank you once more, Anita, for making your time and for sharing your views. And I hope that there will be occasions where we will be able to meet again on one side without the digital interface. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.